Right. We are recording. Hi, everybody. Let's go ahead and start. I'm introducing Ken and then Ken's introducing me. Is that how we're doing this?
Let me introduce you first because you're the star.
Okay. All right.
Probably way more of you know Teresa than me. Teresa is a social network hub and longtime kayaking and river aficionado of our community who is a star in promoting and supporting the growth of our sport and helping new people join, coaching, training, supporting events like this for safety. And we all rely heavily on her because if she wasn't out doing this, it would be a mess. Thank you, Teresa.
That is funny. I don't know what kind of mess it would be, but thank you for that, Ken. Thank you very much. And then to move through the introductions, we have here Ken, who just introduced me, as Ken Goldberg, who's a doctor. Not sure of what kind of medicine, energy medicine.
Preventive
psychology.
Medicine is my specialty. I'm a preventive medicine specialist, and I do a kind of mind, body, personal growth stuff, energy medicine stuff.
Right. And Ken started boating in Grand Canyon as a young man and got sucked in as a guide for a few years. And I think that was a formative experience for him.
Yes.
So we're grateful to have him on the call. He's also a Portland local, so I get to boat with Ken all the time. My other guests, Les Bechdel and Mike Hipsher, both live in McCall now, and I would love to see your faces on the screen. Les, I talked with Les the other day, and he has the longest river resume of anybody I've talked to in recent time. And mine is fairly long, but his is like twice as long. He and Mike both started paddling really early, and they were both competitively paddling at like the World Cup level in C2 and C1 in the 70s, like early 70s, 72. And then I know that Les was also a river ranger on the Middle Fork Salmon. And he also guided on the Chattooga, where I worked for many years, and wrote the book on river rescue along with another fellow that I used to boat with. Les, will you speak so that we can see your face?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you and see you too now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I started boating whitewater in 1960 with the Boy Scouts. And my first world championships was 1963 in Europe. And I raced throughout the 60s. And my last world championships was 1977. So I definitely had a competitive side of that. And then, yeah, I did a couple of years in the service and decided, hey, let's make your recreation your profession. And I never had a real job since. So Mike, I met him at the Nanahail Outdoor Center in Western North Carolina in the Great Smokies, where we helped develop the Nanahail Outdoor Center. And then he and I worked in Chile doing commercial rafting trips on the Biobío River, which is now underwater under dam. And then since then, in 1985, my wife and I moved to Idaho to start a commercial rafting business there. Mike eventually joined us out there for several years, guiding with us. And we sold that business in 2010. And then I couldn't stay off the Middle Fork, so I got a job as a ranger with the Forest Service for 6 seasons. And I'm still boating at the age of 74 and not kayaking too much these days, but I still can row.
That's incredible. And I think maybe the only person whose river resume beats yours is Mike's. Do you think? Mike Hipsher, are you out there?
Yep, I am.
Oh, good.
I don't think it beats it at all. I think Les has kind of been definitely one of my mentors. And
excellent.
He is older than I am.
Oh, excellent. Even better.
Not quite much.
I just kind of took a different route into the river running scene than Les did. The first year I got into kayaking and river rafting, I was a sophomore in college. I got a job working in Canyonlands on the Green in the Colorado. And it just happened to be that I was off the river for the first running of kayaking in the Olympics. The slalom races were in Augsburg, Germany. And I got to catch it on TV. And it just really piqued my interest, partly because I kind of figured it out that at that time, rafting was quite a bit of a commercial deal, partly because the equipment was expensive. It was hard to get. There wasn't an NRS right around the corner, and things like that, where it was tough to get equipment. But kayaks actually were fairly available. People were building their own. And so I built one as well and started kayaking then. And after, I guess it was 7 years in the West, I moved east to join Les and others at the outdoor center in North Carolina. And so that really rounded out my kind of repertoire of things to do on the river, from open canoeing, decked canoeing, kayaking, paddle rafting, rowing. And with that kind of a repertoire, Les invited me to go down to Chile and kind of move from what he and Susan had put together in a paddle rafting only gear in the paddle rafts, kind of a trip on the BOBO. He asked me to help get started with the rowing stuff and put together the equipment and kind of the training for a guide. Just nobody at the outdoor center really knew how to row. We were paddle rafters there. So, and then it was just a little bit before I left the West that I actually started running Grand Canyon. And, but most of my experience was up in Utah on the Colorado and Green through Cataract and the Green River and Westwater. And so I kept my fingers in the Western experience for all that time, and still have my fingers in Grand Canyon and work down there commercially as well. So.
You're going to work this coming season.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I have 3 trips lined up.
Sweet.
So.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we have people that know. So I've got a significantly long slide presentation. And what I'm going to do is run through the first few slides talking myself. And then there's going to be slides with all these bullet points. And I'm hoping that you guys will each speak to whichever one, you know, brings up the most powerful response or the best story. And we'll just work our way through it. And the audience, if you would be willing to please type your questions into the chat window, and then all of us will take the opportunities when we can to respond to the questions that show up in the chat, and we will improvise from there. So I'm going to start my screen share. There it is. Back to the beginning. That's me rowing in Hermit, and that little yellow helmet that's down in the hole is Will, my partner, riding in the bow. And I am really happy that there's so many people interested in safety. This is the title, Managing River-Related Risks on Do-It-Yourself Colorado River Trips, although these principles will apply to any river trip where you're rowing baggage down a big water river. Here's some photographs of our lovely guests. Marc Hunt had hoped to be with us, but he's on the road today driving back east from Points West, and he just couldn't make it. So you can get Marc's perspective on rowing rafts down the Grand Canyon by watching his video, and I have a link to that at the end of the presentation. So there is no such thing as a safe river trip. We all know this. But it bears repeating because sometimes a new paddler might look at a presentation like this and think, oh, if I do everything they say, I'll be safe. No, you can still get yourself hurt or killed. So you know, river running is a constant process of reassessment of the risks and how you can work to avoid getting yourself injured or worse. We have a poll for you guys to find out how much experience the audience has in running rivers. And I'm hoping Will is listening and bringing it up. There it is. So there are 4 questions. If you would please answer. And actually, you guys that are on the panel might as well answer 2, just to give us the full spectrum. And then we'll take a look at how much experience we all have. I think I'm the only one that cannot answer them. Just click as many answers as seem right and then hit submit.
That photo looks like ledges to me. Is that about right?
I'm not sure where it is. It could be though.
Yeah.
I think it's farther upstream. I think it's upstream from Redwall.
Yeah, it looks like Marble Canyon.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Click submit quick because we're about to switch it over to looking at the results. Everybody done? Let's do it. No, I don't see it. There. Oh, wow. 41% have never been. Okay. So really, we have a lot of Grand Canyon rookies here. Have you rigged? Never had the chance is the biggest category, and then a fair number of my boat or rental boat. Let's see, have you self-supported? Oh, 1% in a canoe. I bet I know who that is. Kayak. No pack rafters here today. There are more and more people running it in pack rafts. Probably won't ever self-support, probably will row instead. Yeah, okay. Interesting. I think we've seen enough. Yeah, did I get them all? Yeah. Okay, very interesting. All right, let's see. So just a little overview of how we're approaching this. Start with the problem with Grand Canyon, and then the 3 categories, which I have mentioned at least 100 times so far: rigging, running, and recovering. And I was thinking about adding, you know, besides reading, writing, and arithmetic, I was going to add one more R, which was recruitment, like how to get a good group for the river. But I don't know if we have time for all of that. So the problem, and Les, if you want to speak to this, we would love to hear your perspective. I know you agree with me that it's the trip of a lifetime and that biases the way people treat it.
Yeah, one of the things is, you know, it's so hard to get a permit, and a lot of times people apply and their aunts apply and their uncles and their grandfathers, and all of a sudden you have a permit holder, and a lot of the group may not have very much experience rowing, much less dealing with the bigger water the Grand Canyon offers. And so you don't want to deny the permit, but you know, how do you recruit, as you said, capable people? That's the biggest problem I see.
Yeah, and how many capable people does it take to make a reasonably safe trip? More than one, I would say. You can't expect one person to carry that whole burden.
No, though I did that once. I wouldn't suggest it. Bringing a bunch of my friends and family who didn't know anything about being down there, that wasn't the best thing. But one thing I might say about this is, if you can find somebody with the experience who's been there, who's willing to run your trip for you and have them help you organize it, and recruit and vet people and get a sense of their experience. At least then you have somebody who's kind of steering the ship, so to speak.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, one person to help coordinate is really nice. And the very last bullet point, groups of people who don't know each other well, people tend to get a 16-person trip and try to fill it up because it lowers the costs, right? And they're like, sure, bring your girlfriend, bring your cousin, bring that guy we don't know, bring this other person that we know nothing about. And then you end up with sort of cultural mismatches, and you have more conflict because of it. So it's really, in my opinion, it's safer to go with a smaller group of known quantities than it is to try to fill the trip just in order to bring the cost down, I would say.
I would go along with that for sure. About a year ago, I did an 8-person trip, and all the other trips have been the 16 max or even bigger with commercial trips. And it was so much easier dealing with 8 people's opinions about where to camp and scouting the rapids. Everything was more efficient and ran faster. So I think that's a trap a lot of people do, is they get that one permit of a lifetime and they want to fill it up with the whole number, and it's not necessarily a good thing. I also want to add one other thought too, is that if people have their own boats to row, they should try and do a kind of a warm-up trip on a smaller river, maybe a shorter time length, just sort of to get used to the whole thing of how to rig, how to set up a kitchen, the groover, all that stuff that goes with it, and sort of do a dry run, so to speak, on a shorter river trip.
Yeah, that's a really good call.
Yep, I would totally agree. The 2 private trips I've done were both with 8 or 9 people, and it's just a lot easier to negotiate what hikes you want to do, what kind of trip you want with 8 or 9 people than with 16. Yeah, and to keep moving at the pace you need to move to, make the miles and have a good time.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
they say witches will split the coven when it gets to 13 members. 12 is the max. And this 4th bullet point bears mentioning, although we'll talk about it again, and that is that there's, in any isolated situation where groups get together, there will be some individuals and sometimes an entire group that are mainly out there to party. They don't really care about the river or the hiking or whatever, but they have something they want to do that's not legal, but they get to do it because they're down in the bottom of the canyon. So it's a risk factor, I would say. And when you're recruiting people for your trip, you want to make sure that whoever you're recruiting has a value system and habits that you can live with. Yeah. Let's see if I can get this to move. All right. Oh, the Swiss cheese model of risk management. I added this, you guys. It's something I learned from the last presentation. Basically, when you're trying to figure out how to have a safe trip, you don't want any holes in your Swiss cheese, but there's still always some holes. And if you have a lot of holes in your Swiss cheese, as in if there's a lot of minor failures in your safety practices, and you start to stack up your sandwich such that the mayo leaks all the way through, you're going to have a problem. So you can live with a few minor mistakes and get away with it. But if you have too many holes in your Swiss cheese, then you start to have problems. For example, you don't rig well, you don't run well, so you flip. You probably, if you didn't rig well and you don't know how to run the rapids, you probably don't know how to recover well, and you definitely have a problem. This is something I learned from back when I worked at Pro. I used to work at Pro in Flagstaff, helping outfit private trips. And groups go through these 4 stages fairly predictably whenever a group of people is placed in isolation. The first stage of forming, you are just being friendly and nice and good to everybody. And you're not going to tell them all the negative things you think about them based on your first impression. You're just going to keep your mouth shut. And then norming, everything that everybody agrees about becomes public. So this is a very deliriously fun part of group formation. But then at some point, whatever is hidden, whatever people actually disagree about, or habits that are not acceptable in the group, those gradually come out. And the storming usually happens around the midpoint of the trip, about halfway down. So on the Grand Canyon, it's like after Phantom, somewhere in the big rapids or at one of the camps early, not too far below Phantom, that's where the storming really kicks in. And you will see it in almost every trip, but at different degrees. And the more the people know each other, the less storming has to happen because they already know. And then performing is what you do once you're done storming, you've worked all that out and you can really work together regardless of what disagreements you may have. All right, rigging. Les, you want to start us out on rigging?
Yeah, sure. And this applies to almost any river, not just necessarily the Grand Canyon, but there's an old mantra that says, rig for the flip and dress for the swim. And the trouble with the Grand Canyon is the water's cold, especially at the upper end. And yet you may have these, 100-degree days in the desert. And so you tend to dress for that. But once you're submerged in that water, boy, you don't want to be in it for very long. So that's a, how do you deal with that? And I think what happens is it boils down to when you have a rapid hard enough, you have to scout. That's when you think, all right, I'm going to put my dry top on, or at least a splash jacket or whatever, maybe a full dry suit, depending on the time of year. So that's sort of a basic thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of neoprene. Like I like a neoprene vest and neoprene shorts because then I'm not hot and I'm not cold if I go in too.
Yeah. And
so I made a bunch of lists of rigging mistakes and you guys can all jump in. I know Les mentioned the disco move.
Yeah, I think, if people get a permit and don't have the oar rigs and they go with an outfitter, and most of these are based out of Flagstaff, those outfitters do a really good job of providing excellent equipment, and they provide some instructions at Lee's Ferry to put in. But on the other hand, a lot of boaters are notoriously cheap, and they'll take their 14-foot or 13-foot paddle raft and convert it into an oar rig. So, this is where trying it out ahead of time before you get to Lee's Ferry is really important. But the mechanical part is, check the frame, is it set right? Are your oars the right length? What kind of, setup do you have? Do you have thole pins or do you have open oar locks? Do you have leashes on your oars? I'm a big fan of a small parachute cord or strap that holds the oar to the frame in case you do pop an oar off your oar lick. You can more quickly get the oar back into the oar lock and keep rowing. So having two spare oars that are quickly accessible, and oftentimes too, you need to tell your passengers how they can help. If you do lose an oar, what they can do to help get that spare oar back into the locks so you can start rowing. Over and over again on lots of rivers, and especially the Middle Fork and the main salmon up in Idaho, you see these rafts that have 6-foot high piles of luggage in the stern. And so the boat's going down the river trying to do a wheelie. And if you can balance your load by putting more weight in the front, or maybe your guests in your raft will help balance that load, that's a good idea. But then the other thing too is a lot of people have these tractor seats that sort of locks their rear end to always rowing with the boat always in one direction. But if you get spun around in rapids, rather than have to continue doing 180 degrees, sometimes it's more advantageous to drop your oars, stand up, be a John Travolta, snap your fingers and do a disco move and sit on the cooler in front of you or whatever's in front of you, as long as your raft is rigged, allowed to do that move. And then you don't have to finish the 180 degrees. You can continue down the river the other way around, your stern going forward. So that's just a thought about rigging your boats. The other thing is the ability to get back in the boat. When in my younger age, there's no problem. I just, if I got thrown out of the raft, I just grab the spare oar of the frame and do a pull up and get on. And as I've gotten weaker in my old age, I'll cheat, and they can make these little rope ladder things you can deploy. Or what I do is I just have a single 1-inch tubular webbing with a little loop on it that I can clip in and put my foot in the loop and cheat that way to get back in the boat.
It's not cheating.
Anything's legal in whitewater and love, right?
If it gets you back in the boat, it's fair game.
Yeah. The other part of that too is if the boat does turn upside down, it's amazing how that 22-inch, 24-inch tube is just mammoth when you're, neck deep in the water. And so I've always added what I call a grab strap to both the bow and the stern. Because of the kick of the boat, those are going to be the lowest points rather than trying to get into the overturned raft, onto the overturned raft from the side of the raft. So if you have a little strap already rigged there, and this again, 1-inch tubular webbing, maybe 2-3 feet long, it just trails there. There's no loop there. So there's no chance of getting entrapped if you get caught under the raft. But you use this grab strap to gain the drain holes in the floor or the lacing to get onto the overturned raft. And when that water's cold, that's what you want to do. You want to get out of the water and onto the bottom of the boat, as well as your passengers as well. So that's one thing to do for sure.
How long do you make them?
I make them, well, depending on the tube size, but usually about 3 feet long. And
Long
they just
enough
grip.
that you can easily reach it from the water when the boat is upside down.
Exactly. And I have one in the bow and the stern. If it's like on the salmon, I often rigged at what's called a belly band. We have another strap across the center of the raft tied in to the floor lacings. And that takes a little more athletic to get a hold of that. But once you got a hold of that, it's easy to pull on. And if it's a light boat, like a paddle raft, not an oar rig, you can actually do a mid-river recovery and not even have to tow the boat to shore if you have enough extra bodies. And a lot of professional guides will wear a waist belt of tubular webbing or rope, whatever, that's about 6 feet long that you can unclip and use that to help give you a little more mechanical advantage to flip the paddle raft back over. But I think we're focusing on oar rigs primarily here. So
Yeah, pretty much. Although, whatever, it all goes. What about you, Mike? Do you rig something special for climbing up on the boat, or do you not flip anymore?
No, I definitely, it's just a question of when, it's not if you flip. The company I work for down there, we actually have a rope adjustable with a strap on one end that goes from the D-ring in the front of the boat all the way underneath into the back of the boat. So it's kind of it's lined up in the same direction as the boat is moving most of the time, and so that strap is tight on the bottom. It's not flopping around and adjustable with that strap on one end. And it does the same thing Les is talking about. It gives you a handle to get up on top of the boat from one end or the other. And so you can kind of hand over hand up that whole line to be able to get up there. And then actually sometimes have something to hold on to while you are up there and the boat goes through some more waves.
Good point. Yeah.
So, and it's something that we use actually on all of our boats, both rowing and paddle rafting. So.
let me interject one other thought here. A lot of people have a drag bag for their beverages, and some of these drag bags are gigantic. I mean, you put two or three cases of beer in there, and my experience with that is it's like what sailors in the ocean call a sea anchor. You got this big weight back there, and you start running the rapids, and all of a sudden you got this drag, literally drag. It's hard to maneuver your boat left or right, and you got to train yourself to pull it in before you run a hard rapids. That's great. Excuse me. Or, you have a small dry bag that has maybe only 6-pack worth of beer that doesn't affect the motion of your boat.
I think we'll come to that again. I just wanted to reinforce the bit about checking the frame and the oar holders, because twice now in my rowing life, I've had either the oar lock and holder both pop off and drop into the river in the middle of Hell's Half Mile at 5 feet on the Middle Fork. That happened to me. And then the other time I had just the oar lock pop out, it was a pin that popped off. And so the first event I was paddling a borrowed raft, and the other time I was paddling a BLM River Ranger raft or rowing on the Merced, and when my pin popped out. So the commercial outfitters probably will have already checked these things, but if you borrow a raft or if you're using a raft that's been in storage more than it's been in use, these are really important things to check to make sure that your frame and your oar holders and your oar locks or your pins are going to stay put, because they do fail. This is what my rig looks like when I go on the rogue. Here's a few more mistakes that people make. No hard points, but hard point is when you actually go through a handle or something on any item you're trying to strap down, that even if the strap comes off of the item, it will still be dangling from the boat like that. Load too high so you can't see the water. Yeah, that's not very useful. And then this raft rig is particularly bad for not having any elbow room. When you're rowing, your elbows go back. And if you don't have room for your elbows to back, you can't take a full stroke, right?
Or really ship your oars.
Or ship them, that's correct. And then the triangles of death are, for example, how the straps are going out from the side of the cooler down to the handle, and there's a space under there. Spaces like that are places where a person's leg or head could go. And you just don't want triangles of death if you can avoid them.
Teresa,
Yes.
is that somebody's actual raft, or was that done for a hyperbole or for a joke?
I don't want to say who rigged that, but that is a real golly guides rowing his gear down for an overnighter on the upper lower combo. Yes, that's a real, that really happened. And I don't know how he got down the river, but he was so proud.
I think Jed Clampett would have been better off with his
Possible, yeah. I mean, that's a pretty frightening rig. I hope your raft doesn't have to carry that much stuff.
up from the ground came some bubbling crude.
That's right.
But let me add one other thought too, that besides the triangle of death, you really don't want any loose lines in the boat. I really believe in the perimeter hand lines. So if you get thrown out of the raft, you have something to grab a hold of to help get back in the raft. But that perimeter line going around the boat should be tight, but not too so tight you can't get your fingers in it. The second thing is I've seen people do this, their bow line or their tie line, they use a throw bag. Well, it's a pain in the butt every time you tie up to restuff that bag and then let it hang from your bow D-ring. That most people are better off having, a 30 to 50 foot bow line that then is secured to the hand line some way. And I think how you secure it's real important. There's a way it's called a girth hitch. I won't go into the details of how to rig that, but that way you can get at the bow line very quickly in case you have to tow a swamp boat to shore, or you have a really tight eddy you're pulling into. You want to be able to get that. And a lot of times you see people do these fancy weird hanks with the rope wrapped around and the strap down, and it's just difficult to undo that quickly. The second thing along with that is I really believe in stern tie lines as well, both the bow and the stern, because if you flip, or you might not be able to work your way around to get that bow line free, where if you're right at the stern already, you have the line ready to go. Also, sometimes you have a really tight eddy with fast water to get into that you're going to back ferry into, and you don't have room to spin your boat around, or you have somebody on shore to assist you to secure you, and that having two lines to tie in with both in the bow and the stern is a really good idea.
How long do you like yours to be?
I like 50 feet.
50 feet for the bow and the stern?
Both, one in the bow 50 feet, one in the stern 50 feet.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a Grand Canyon length.
Yeah, and also after running commercial trips in the Middle Fork of the main salmon here in Idaho, it's real handy that you don't have to do some Boy Scout knot around a boulder. You can run up to a tree, and it's just
Right.
easier that way.
Yeah.
Speaking of ropes, every raft should have at least one throw bag. And normally, as a boatman or boatwoman, you want to have it in your rowing well so you can quickly access it. But gosh, so many times, you make a throw, but then you got to go back to the oars. And if I have passengers, I train them how to throw the bag as well, and what to do if they actually connect with a swimmer, how to get the swimmer back to my boat and into my boat. But I often have a throw bag up in that where the passengers are in either the front or the back, depending where they are. And then I have a second throw bag in my rowing well.
Mhm. Yeah. It's
For
very
that
helpful.
second bag, sometimes it's a good idea to have everybody agree to put it in the same place. Like on the right, near the right oarlock stand. And that way everyone knows where to go to get it in case the boat's upside down.
Okay.
So then you've got 3 different lines to go for, as Les talks about, one in the bow, one in the stern, and one on the side.
Mhm.
And whatever of those places you get to on that upside down raft, you can grab the rope.
Right. I've seen people get up on their own boat that way too. They know where their rope is clipped on. They throw the rope over to the other side, clipped it in on one side, swim around the other side and climb up using the rope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen it done. I'm going to go backwards by one slide because I think we might have missed a thing or two. Oh, heaviest items low in the boat. That's fairly self-evident. Balance the weight front and back. Les already talked about it. Be ready to leave camp or lunch as a group. That was your point, Mike, about keeping the group together, but it has to do with getting started rigging early enough that you're not the last one and everybody leaves you behind because you're taking so long to rig.
Yeah, for sure. Having everybody kind of simultaneously ready to go really makes the trip feel a lot better, rather than being the person who is consistently late or having to wait for that person.
Right. I mean, it's certainly more
Well,
pleasant being the one that's already ready and waiting. It sucks being that last person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it really is a safety issue. If you're not getting out of camp at a reasonable time in the morning, you won't get to camp in the night. You won't be running the rapids with enough time and energy. And that's a safety issue.
It is. Yeah. All right. Rig to flip every day. What do you guys say about this? Rig to the frame which you have checked and know is solid. Do you agree?
Yeah, rope through every.
Absolutely. Yep.
One thing that can help too is as your trip progresses, have the group. I like to have the same things in my raft every day. So I have a way that I rig, a box or a table or the same number of bags. And I think that if the people can get the habit of doing that, then rigging goes that much faster every morning. The other thing is spread things out evenly. I mean, I've had horror stories where the kitchen box got dumped and all of a sudden there's nothing to cook with. You know, that if maybe you have your Dutches in one bag in one raft and then all the pots and pans in another raft, at least you spread the joy of a wrecked boat out that way.
Yeah.
So little things like that make, it's only through experience can you really do that. But anyways.
Okay. Oh yes, my favorite rig again. So one last important thing about rigging, and that is that your body needs to be rigged with a life jacket at a bare minimum, right? People get pretty casual about life jackets in the flat water, and then the wind comes up and the thing blows away, or they drop into some tiny little hole that they didn't even think was significant, and suddenly they're swimming without a life jacket, and that's an emergency when the water is ice cold. So, yeah. And all the rest of it, dress for the water temperature, I think we'll beat on that one for a while because it's really important. And the water used to be really cold in the Grand Canyon. I hear it's kind of warm right now.
It is warming up a little bit as the level in Lake Powell goes down, and through the summer it seems to warm up. But I think it's part of that is perception too, that you do get used to it as you go downstream.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to add one thing about dangling on your person, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is carabiners. And I'm a firm believer in every exposed carabiner should be a locking one. And there has been, I wouldn't say numerous, but several drownings in the Grand Canyon of a person being clipped to something in an upside down boat and not being and drowning. Yeah, so having that locked carabiner on where you have it, where it's convenient on your life
Right
jacket,
there.
it really
Mhm.
makes a difference.
Or the guide belt.
Yeah, the strap belt that Les is talking about
Mhm.
should be a locking carabiner, and even on your water bottle that's, you've clipped into your rowing compartment. That could be the thing that catches on something.
Yeah,
So
it's true. I actually have been that person who's been clipped into a raft 2 times because of my guide belt not having a locking beaner on it. And both times it was not fatal, obviously. And I appear to have not learned my lesson because I'm still using the same guide belt system. But I'm also not rafting anymore, and I have not had any clip-in worries being just a kayaker. So I think it's much more important when you're on a raft to avoid getting clipped in. Because on a kayak, you're hard pressed to get clipped in. Anyway, oh, here's some friends of mine who are very well equipped. Not only are their life jackets snug as a bug, but they're wearing helmets, which is fairly unusual in Grand Canyon, but I personally am a fan. I like helmets. This is the final rigging slide. Enough capacity. We talked about that a little bit, but basically if people don't have enough rafts, they tend to overload them. And if they all own 12-foot rafts and they all want to bring their own raft instead of renting one, that can add up to not enough capacity. Bring less stuff. That's my favorite one. Anything you guys want to speak to?
Someone in the comments made the suggestion of making sure that there aren't too many, there are as few hard things exposed as possible. Like in that picture that you had on the what looked like a pro rig, the hard stuff's under the decks. It's low down. The few things that are above deck line are dry bags, softer things. So that's a great plan. Of course, the helmets are still a good idea. The frame itself or the oars are always going to be exposed. If you flip, you can hit your head. The best rigging is still has a risk for that. So helmet's the obvious safety factor, but you're right, they're not d'jour down there yet because it's so hot usually.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, but on the big whitewater days, when you're running the big rapids, like Les was saying, if it's big enough that you're going to scout it, maybe you'll put on your dry top and your helmet. Yeah.
I'd like just one last comment about that less stuff.
Yeah.
That boy, over and over again, especially when I was rangering on the Middle Fork, I think people just have this attitude. Well, I got a raft. I can throw anything into it. Like way too many clothes or way too many cases of beer. And then all of a sudden they pay the price trying to, dodge rocks when the Middle Fork's low. Well, in the Grand Canyon, dodging rocks isn't quite the issue, but still, a heavier boat's harder to run. That this idea that I can take whatever in my boat is a trap. That I think just take what you need. Don't bring tons of extra stuff. And I've been on trips where it's ridiculous the amount of beverages that go on the trip, and then there's leftover beverages after the trip. Like, oh gosh, So I would hark on that bring less stuff issue.
It's
Yeah,
it's not a fashion show.
No, you don't need a different costume every night or a boombox or, well, what about bocce ball or horseshoes? Those are heavy.
Mandatory. Horseshoes are mandatory. Come on.
You have to establish your priorities. That's all.
Right. Yeah. You got to have priorities. That's a good way to put it. All right. You guys ready to leave rigging and go to running? Mike?
Yeah.
Will you lead us through this section?
Sure. So, yeah, I can kind of speak to the points that Teresa has here of the overview of running. Having a plan. Let me talk a little bit about that, having a plan. Having a plan can actually start even before the trip starts. You know, you can actually be about asking everybody on the trip to kind of do a little bit of research. You can use the web. You can use the Grand Canyon's been being written about since 1870 when John Wesley Powell ran down there. And even before that with the Spanish in the area. There's tons of stuff about Grand Canyon and tons of stuff to see in Grand Canyon. And unless you have kind of an idea of what you want to do down there, you can kind of do a whole Grand Canyon trip and never see anything. So it just kind of gets away from you if you haven't got a plan. So do a little bit of pre-trip research and come up with some specific places you want to hike, specific places you want to see and do. Maybe there's a place that piques your interest from your research on the web of a picture, and maybe you want to see that picture, artwork. You want to paint that picture. So with that, you can kind of sit down the first few days as a group and kind of lay out where you don't want to miss. What's really important to you, what's really important to the group, and kind of make your daily plan at dinner each night to include those things. And the comment about input and buy-in by everyone is because it does take everyone to be able to accomplish those plans. You know, maybe it's that you get up early and get on the river that day to be able to do a big hike that you've got in mind downstream, or it's a layover day and you want to do a big hike. Some people do, and some people want to just sleep in and rest. So you can kind of talk about all of that kind of stuff at dinner when you sit down to dinner to eat together that night. So that group dinner really makes a difference, really is a great time to do that communication, and as well as build that group mentality that we're kind of beating around the bush on, but that is so important to a successful Grand Canyon trip, is having everybody on the same page with everyone's input really makes a lot of difference. So another reason for that group mentality is the Park Service actually says that you're supposed to stay together. And there's lots of reasons for that, one of which is safety, so that you can actually see each other, to take care of each other on your trip. You might actually be able to interact more effectively with other trips. If you guys have sat down at night and everybody kind of knows the plan, whoever talks to that person in another trip can kind of be a little bit, maybe a little bit more assertive and say, these are the things that we want to do today. And what's your plan? And how can we work together to make sure that you guys get to do what you want to do and we get to do what we want to do? So also sticking together like that while you're running on the river, it's easier to communicate and make changes. You know, if the wind comes up and it's obvious that you're not going to get to be able to do that as long a hike as you wanted to, then it's easier to make that communication kind of thing go on. So let's see.
I would add.
Somebody asked, so for the running, let's see. Yeah. So I think I've kind of, then it minimizes the impacts on other groups too. If you are just one group instead of 2 or 3 spread out all over the place, other groups can know where you're going and where they can go as well. Because some of the places in Grand Canyon are small enough that it makes sense that just one group is in there. And Macadamiba at mile 147 is one of those places. You know, you can't fit more than one trip into the mouth of Macadamiba. So somebody asked a question about how does it work for flat water and whitewater. And I think the statistic is something like 10% of the distance of Grand Canyon is actually in rapids. The rest of it's flat water. And the flat water is every bit as beautiful as that stuff that's in the rapids, but it moves a little bit slower. So trying to use your most experienced person and their knowledge of a Grand Canyon really helps out. But there's also some really good printed river guides, not only living river guides, but there's printed ones that come in books. And there's a couple of authors I can think of right off the top of my head. Larry Stevens has published one that actually easily fits in your ammo can. And the Belknap company has another version of that same kind of thing. Both of those are waterproof. And so you don't really need to put them in your ammo can. You can tuck them under a strap or under a bag. For the flat water days, they can get wet and they'll survive. There's another one by Tom Martin. It is more of a topo map type river guide, and then has a rapid description on the facing page to it as you open it up. They're spiral bound books and they stay open. You can just have them open right beside you so you can kind of tell where you are if you've never been down there. So
Can I jump in?
yes.
On the subject of keeping the group together and the flat water versus the whitewater, invariably groups will kind of separate a little bit whenever the fast people get in the front and they're active on the oars and they're pushing downstream, and then the less experienced rowers may end up catching more eddies by accident, or they have to stop for whatever reason, or they're just not paying attention. They're not moving downstream as quickly. And you fix that by having the people in the front actually stop to wait, and the people in the back actually get on the oars and start rowing when they realize they've fallen behind. And this sounds really obvious, but groups get spread out by miles down there, and it's really risky. So, front people slow down, back people speed up. And when you're coming up to a rapid that's significant enough that you think something might happen, you really want to completely stop until the tail of the trip catches up so that you can run together. You don't want to, private trips do this and commercial trips don't, but private trips will get spread out, and then there'll be one boat that runs some huge rapid all by themselves and flips or whatever happens, and there's nobody there to help. Or somebody in the back rips a raft and they stop to repair it, and they're around the bend and nobody even knows why they stopped. And they're 5 miles downstream before they realize that they're not coming. Either one of those is not acceptable. So you really have to stay close enough, like Mike said, close enough that you can see each other. So at least you know if somebody has to stop for a reason or somebody has flipped.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You should be able to see the boat in front of you and the boat behind you. And if you lose track of either one, you either speed up or you stop and wait for that boat behind. Or, in the kind of the drastic plan is to stop, get out of your boat and walk back upstream until you find them, if that's possible due to the terrain.
Right. Can be hard.
There's a question in the chat about radios. Radios, in my experience down there, people have used them and they turn into kind of a maintenance nightmare. not that they're going to hurt anybody, but just that they become annoying in that you always have to have your radio on, and sometimes it's about quiet. So sight, the line of vision actually is just as effective as a radio, I believe. It's not quite as easy to communicate, but as long as you know your river signals and what, if somebody upstream of you is given the signal to stop, then stop and they'll catch up and you can figure it out. So if there's others who have better experience with radios, I would be open to learning how you do it.
I think there's other places where they're more useful, like for example, on Marsh Creek headed down into the Middle Fork, where you want to know if there's a log jam coming up. But in Grand Canyon, I have never used them.
I would add one thing about the keeping the group together.
Yeah.
For those who don't have much experience in big water, the staying in the current can be really challenging. It's a whole skill in itself. And it's, if you're in the back and you get caught in a couple eddies, getting out of an eddy isn't just 10 seconds. It can take you 10 minutes. So if you're the guy who gets caught in a couple eddies or can't stay in the current, admitting it to your group and saying, hey, I don't know how to row this kind of water. How do I do this? And getting some coaching and practice with it can make a huge difference, because you can spend a lot of energy getting in and out of eddies and fighting the current there. The current's so strong and the river's so wide, and there may be only a thin thread of downstream current. So it's part of the safety of keeping the group together, is knowing, oh, right, there is a skill to that, and how to read where the downstream current is and avoid the eddies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. You guys want to take this question from Daniel Colbert? Daniel, do you want to speak? Okay. Moving on to the next subject then. Reading big water. It's
Oh, no, that was my fault. I didn't mean to raise my hand. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. I think you guys have all added to this collection of bullet points. Scout from as many perspectives as possible, and still you might not read it right if you're a small water boater.
Yep. Yeah, I added that hole is bigger than it looks. If you're not used to big water, it doesn't look like that much, but it doesn't take that big a hole with, 15,000 CFS or 18,000 CFS to push your little boat around. So even those holes that look friendly may not be so friendly.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a long ways away, and you're looking at it probably from way up on high.
Mm-hmm. Which compresses the gradient.
Yeah.
You can't see the gradient when you're up high. Yeah, like scouting from up on the cliff, looking down at Horn, and you're like, you can see the whole rapid. It looks like a tongue, no problem, right? And then you get out there in your boat and you're standing on your cooler and you still can't see over the edge. Yeah.
That
And this
one maybe additional point is after you have read the big water and you devised a plan among all your group, you're all decided to leave at the same time, that you're kind of all ducks in a row. And then you start your walk back to your boat, is pay attention to what all those landmarks look like as you get down towards water level. So you can kind of keep reviewing the map of the river, of the rapid in your mind, as well as in your vision as you get closer and closer down to river level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good one. And sometimes I have to climb back up high again to be like, really? Is that my only landmark? That little tiny rooster tail of water? Yeah.
Let me also interject here.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the scouting action, I think, is really critical for the big name rapids, for sure. That as a group you scout it, and you discuss where the hazards are, and then you all as a group develop the line, and maybe the more experienced boaters will share their knowledge with the less experienced boaters. But then you always want to have a plan B. What if I don't make that cut? What if I spin out or whatever? And make sure people have a plan B, like how to deal with not the ideal run. And then, as Mike said earlier, it's safety in numbers, having you go all together. And a lot of times groups say, oh, I want to see the probes go out there first and see how it affects their boats. And God, I've always been loath to do that, like divide the group in half. And if you do that, you want at least a minimum of 2 boats to provide that entertainment for the rest of the group as they scout. But generally speaking, I think you're just better off all going at once. The other thing too is that the river, you may have experience on the river, but the rapids change with the water levels. And my experience has been the lower the river gets, the Grand Canyon, the harder it is. I mean, there's
Mhm.
more rocks. The holes are still as nasty or nastier at 8,000 than they are at 15,000. So that's something to bear in mind, that you may have a history of running a certain rapids a certain way, but always have your mind open whenever you scout.
I agree. I would add to that that when I first started running Grand Canyon, I came to it from a creeker, an Eastern creeker's perspective, and I was always trying to go around everything. I was like, that wave is too big. I'm not going to hit that. You know, even though I was in a 18-foot raft, I was scared to hit the big waves. And later on, I learned that often the easiest line is right down the gut. Right? Like there's no point in trying to avoid the big waves. That's where the fun is, and especially if you have a huge boat. But, you know, it took me a few trips to get past that fear that I had as a small water boater of being afraid of the big water.
So in light of the Les's comment about the running as a group, I think actually the less experienced people have a better chance of entering the rapid well, if they're behind somebody who actually knows where to enter the rapid. And it's actually a better perspective being on the water behind that person than it is trying to figure it out on your own after you've watched them run. So
yeah,
I'm a firm believer in everybody run at once. And if, you know, there's always certainly interest in taking photographs and things like that of the rapids, people's different runs. And there certainly is times to split the group in half. And there's certain rapids where it makes sense, and there's certain rapids where it doesn't. You know, and Hermit is one of those rapids where it makes sense. It's got a mile-long flat water pool below there. There's lots of room to recover. And, you know, Granite and Hance, as much as we like pictures of those, it's better done with a GoPro in your boat. So those are difficult places to recover a flip raft. You will go for a long ways below those guys, those two rapids in particular. So make your photography decisions based on the character of the raft and your comfortable level in them.
Yeah, photography is definitely secondary to safety.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would add, I appreciate and agree with what you said, Mike, that running together is really best. And I would say at least 3 boats, because I've had the experience with people who aren't familiar with big water. It was actually on the Snake, and one of my boating buddies hadn't done much big water, and he was going first, and we came around the corner and there's wild sheep. And I stand up on my boat to look, and I can see his raft is through the rapid and upside down. And I have this moment of, oh, he didn't realize it was a big rapid. He didn't know where to enter or what to do. And because entering is most of the chore in these rapids, and it's not so easy to figure out when the river's, you know, really wide and there's not good landmarks and you haven't scouted well. So 2 things about that. One is that I had the quick choice. I'd never done that river either. Do I stop and scout, or do I hurry up and chase him? And of course, that's a tough call to make. I decided to stop and scout because I figured if I flipped too, I'd be no good to anybody. So it was the quickest scout I've ever done. I probably was on shore for 30 seconds or maybe 90, and then chased him down. And the third boat that was with us, there were 3 boats running, followed me. And I was glad there were 3 of us, because some of his passengers ended up on the far right shore, and the boat and the boatman and 1 passenger were on the left side. And if there had only been 1 of us, I would have had to pick, who am I chasing? So with 3 boats together, 1 boat, you know, I was able to signal, you go get the people on the right shore, I'll chase the boat and the people on the left shore. So 3 boats is a good minimum for running together.
Yeah, and even then it can go haywire.
Of course, either of us could have flipped too, right?
Yeah.
But at least with 3 boats, you got a better chance that 1 will end up upright, or maybe even 2, and you can spread out the safety recovery.
Yeah. Anything to add?
I think this running order slide really kind of is really concise and meets all the points. I just wanted to talk most experienced boaters first and last.
Yeah.
The idea of the first really does set the tone, or maybe even the entry point of the rapid. And the last is kind of the last resort for rescue. The last should be somebody who's got some river rescue experience and skills. They should have the patch kit, the pump, spare kayak paddles, all the kind of stuff that you would need to kind of clean up the mess, so to speak. And then with the less experienced boaters running in the middle, they oftentimes the first or the second boat in order should be close enough to the first boat to be able to actually help the first boat in case they flip. Even that most experienced person, it really, like I said earlier on, it's a matter of if rather than when somebody flips or something like that.
You meant when rather than if.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Got it. But, so everybody flips down there, and it's actually not easy to catch a boat that is in front of you. Because it could be in the tailwaves and just flying downstream. So, so having that second boat be ready for that first boat flip and thinking about that is a good idea. So, but you don't want to be so close that you're running into each other while you're in the rapid as well. That can turn into that can turn into a mess just as easily. So, yeah.
Yeah. How do you get yourself the right distance from each other going into a major rapid?
You practice in things like Badger and Soap Creek and House Rock and things like that. And you just kind of learn how that boat, who's in the boat in front of you, and are they pushing through the whole rapid so that they're actually making a little bit of speed on the water, or are they kind of like the deer in the headlights and they're pulling all the time to slow themselves down and ultimately row themselves right into you? So learning how each rower behaves in their boat can help you figure that too tight or too loose kind of idea.
Yeah.
So,
well, this is where when you're scouting as a group, I often talk with the other people, are you going to push this rapid or pull it? Meaning, are you pushing your oars going forward, aiming towards the route you want? Or are you going to be back faring, rowing back and forth? Because the back faring style is definitely going to be slower. So then who is in front of you, which way they're going to row. You can kind of gauge to give them more or less running room. But the biggest thing is after you scout, everybody's got kind of a plan, what they want to do. And then you go down the boats and everybody ready? Yeah. All right. And then you just peel out of the eddy and all goes a group. Because again, if somebody flips, it needs lots of help, either gathering up the swimming participants or the raft itself.
This might be a good place to mention also the unusual, for people who don't run bigger water, use of the downstream ferry. So that if you're talking about what's our plan for running this, and somebody's going to use a downstream ferry and somebody's not, right? That the downstream ferry is much faster. You're really pulling downstream, whereas somebody who's pushing won't have as much momentum and so on. So you want to think about how fast your boat will move. I think Marc did a great job in his video of describing the use of the downstream ferry and how valuable it can be when the boats are so heavy. You have 3 weeks of gear, it's an 18-foot boat. If you're not used to it, it's a great way to develop momentum and use the current, but it's a little skill and it's not something you do a whole lot on other rivers.
So there was a question.
We'll talk more about that downstream ferry really soon, but I just wanted to say one more thing about how to get your spacing right coming out of a pool and into a major rapid. When you're in the pool, you can have your rafts bumper to bumper. And then as the water accelerates, the rafts will pull away from each other. And so almost always people who are inexperienced with this pool drop, big water will be really far away from each other because they'll be pretty far apart in the pool. And then when they get to the fast water, they're even farther apart. And so if you want to be close enough to help, you know, in the rapids or immediately after the rapids, you actually need to be quite close together in the slow water above the rapid. And then as each person accelerates into the rapid, that's when you set your spacing. Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think,
So,
oh yeah, we haven't quite gotten to downstream ferries, but momentum management, pretty important when your mass is massive.
Teresa, let's go back to spacing. There was a
Yeah.
question that came up in the chat
Yeah.
of mixed craft rafting.
Oh yes.
You know, that there's, you know, 2 or 3 rowing rigs and a paddle raft and a couple of kayaks and a canoe and all sorts of things going on.
Yep.
And a lot of times realizing that the moment of one of those big boats that's full of your 3 weeks of gear is practically impossible to change at a moment's notice.
Mhm.
So realizing those things go fairly straight, really easy, and don't maneuver real well. The kayaks and canoes need to be aware of that. They're actually 18 feet wide. They're not just 8 feet wide because there's oars that stick out and they need their space for the oars. So having the kayaks realize that those are big kind of moving targets, kayaks and canoes need to stay out of the way. And so how do they do that? So a lot of times on a trip, there will be kind of mixed skills in the kayaking group. If the kayaking group is comfortable, a lot of times having the kayaking group actually run first as a group to be able to take care of each other, and then be down below for anything that might happen with the rowing rigs or the paddle raft is a good idea. If the group isn't comfortable with that idea, they can always run after the big boats run. And the big boats are very effective rescue crafts, especially down in the flat water down below. So a big boat can row over to an upside down kayak. One of the passengers in the big boat can help the kayaker climb into the big boat and kind of get everything kind of squared away while you're still out in the water, actually.
Yep.
So
Yep.
even pulling the filled kayak up on the boat becomes
Yep.
a possible thing to do.
Yep.
So every trip is different. It just kind of depends on what your group's skill levels are and what you're comfortable with. But really trying to have the first thing realize that the small boats, kayaks, canoes stay out of the way of the big boats. So, because they aren't nearly as maneuverable as you are.
Normally we have them run in their own pod. The paddle raft, if there is one, and any kayaks and canoes run together. And then they have their own pacing issues to sort out between them, which is another whole subject.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would echo what you said, Mike, that unless if your kayakers are really experienced and unlikely to swim, it's fine to have them run first. But if there's any likely to swimmers, better to have them run behind. The rafts are a much better rescue craft than other kayaks. Trying to paddle somebody to shore with their boat, it's a big river. It's very different than a 50-foot wide river. It's 50 feet across the eddy.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
I might add that I actually like running the paddle raft as just one of the rafts, but having a few rowing rigs below, because if all of the people of the paddle raft fall out, there's lots of things to collect. So, but having that be kind of part of the rafting group makes more sense to me than adding it to the kayak variable.
Yeah. Anybody want to take momentum management?
Sure, I'll talk a little bit about it. I know that we've used the term downstream ferry, and the idea of this momentum management
Angle.
is angle. Exactly. It's kind of that to be able to make a move from right to left, almost all the time you need to use the eddy behind a rock to be able to do it. And some people are adept and precise enough that they can push on the oars to get into that eddy, to be able to kind of do an S turn in through that eddy. And some people actually maybe don't have the finesse, and a little bit of strength goes a long way, is to look over your shoulder, and it's actually looking over the upstream shoulder and rowing backwards into that eddy, and then letting your feet swing in front of you as your raft kind of keeps that momentum going the direction that you've initiated. So there's a lot of other places where angle management makes a lot of difference as well, is oftentimes if you hit a wave perpendicular to the wave, the front of the boat will go up and over the wave. If you hit a wave at an angle, you're certainly going to go surfing off to the side in the direction that you're pointing. So, so that angle management on waves, eddy lines, and as well as holes makes a difference. Perpendicular or angled has pretty different consequences. And actually, to go along with that, having your oars in the water makes a difference as well. That as you go into that wave, you're perpendicular to it, having your oars in the water so you're actually tied to the water that's going through the wave will help quite a bit of getting up and over. I've seen incidents in Hermit where the oars weren't in the water and you go into that big wave down near the bottom and it breaks just right, and all of a sudden the raft is surfing that big wave. And it doesn't take too long before the raft turns sideways typically and flips. But I've also seen them do kind of an end stand and go up and over the wave finally.
Nice.
Usually it's not a very calm ride though. Quite photogenic.
I might add that keeping the oars in the water is extra important down there, both because you need both oars often to correct, to, regain your angle or to straighten your boat up. Because the boats are so heavy that if you only have one, if you lost one, use the one you got. But it's a lot easier to straighten your boat up or maintain your angle with both oars. I've also had the experience of having an oar out of the water and having one of those waves hit it. And they're big and strong, and it rips it right out of your hands. Mm-hmm. So if they're in the water, that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True. Let's back up and talk a little bit about momentum, because an 18-foot raft with 3 weeks worth of provisions on board is very heavy. And when you have a lot of momentum in, just going with the current, you need to be assured that your momentum that you have built is going in the right direction. And part of what we talked about earlier, staying out of eddies, has everything to do with keeping your momentum going in the right direction.
Yeah, let me just say that a lot of times people don't angle enough. I mean, you start into it, you want to start right and go left.
Mm-hmm.
Like they start middle drifting and then they do this, this really soft stroking, but the raft is pointed in line with the current. That it had the raft to move anywhere has to really be angled. Like I think about 45-degree angles a lot. If I want to get to the left, I'm going to really put my stern around to the left and row backwards, or if I'm going to push it, but it's that 45. That way, the current itself is helping to push that raft either left or right, in addition to what power you're creating with the oars themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And would you all agree that we're talking about the angle to the current, not necessarily the river direction?
Absolutely. And
but
the
the
current can
direction.
go any direction, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I can say sort of as a general concept that a lot of rapids in Grand Canyon, it starts in a wide pool and then there's a constriction, usually because the side canyon has dumped a bunch of cobbles in the river, and there's a constriction, and the river goes from wide to narrow and then back to wide. And when there's this convergence of water, the water that's coming in from the sides, the stuff that's way over on the right, when it comes into the rapid, it's going right to left. And the water that's over on the left side above the rapid, when it comes into the rapid, it's going left to right. And so where you start, which water you start on will dictate which direction your momentum is going on. And that setup, that starting position is of great importance because of the momentum you generate just riding the current.
Right. Let me also interject too that we could spend the next 3 hours talking about the finesse and how to row this river. But there's a great video out on YouTube by Marc Hunt called Tips on Rowing the Grand Canyon. And he really looks at the major rapids and talks about the angles and the lines and all that, as well as a lot of other safety information. And even people that have lots of experience have looked at this video and said, oh my God, I learned a lot. So that's,
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's a great video. Tips for running the Grand Canyon. Marc Hunt produced it.
I have a link to it at the end of this presentation. And just a heads up, we're an hour and 20 minutes in, and we're not even through the second of 3 parts. So should we speed up or just keep going at the same pace? Speed up. Angle management we did. High siding. This is how a passenger or boatman can perhaps influence the fate of a boat, whether or not it flips when it hits a rock or a wave sideways. Have you guys seen somebody save a fully loaded gear rig from flipping by high siding?
Yes, the first one that comes to mind is at the bottom of Horn Creek, that the raft is pasted on the wall there. And all of the people climbed up to the top of the raft. It took one bounce and the raft was off the pin situation and on its way right side up. It was amazing.
That's a good crew for you though, because most people aren't that on the ball. And so if you can train any humans on board your raft to relocate their mass towards a rock when you're going to hit it and get there before you hit the rock or before you hit the hole, that makes all the difference. Yeah. All right. Boat-based safety. We've already talked about eddying out below rapids. We've already talked about throw bags and passengers ready. And hard boats chase anything that gets away. This is self-evident. Making time downriver. Ken alluded to this earlier as a safety issue. Basically, if you don't get your river miles done and you're still on the river at dinner time and everyone's tired and then you have to run lava, things are not going to go well. So you do all the things that allow you to get to your camp on time. And on time would be like in time for happy hour or maybe even in camp for lunch. That's optimal in my view. I like being in camp for lunch. But if you have a hike on the way down, you won't get there for lunch. Yeah. An early launch is especially important in Grand Canyon because of the wind tunnel effect, the way the solar heating causes an upstream wind pretty much every afternoon. And if you wait until noon to get yourself shoved off from your camp, then you will be fighting a headwind. And so you can avoid that simply by resetting your calendar, your clock, so that you get on the water a little bit earlier. And any experienced Grand Canyon veteran will tell you this.
So the main safety issue here is get somebody who likes to get up early to get the coffee going before the sun comes up so you can get things rolling and bring coffee to those people in their tents or in their beds that will be slow.
Yeah, we had a guy on my trip that got up early and did the coffee. We just loved him throughout the whole trip.
Oh yeah, there's always someone like that, and it's wonderful. And the staying in the current, Ken mentioned how it is a skill, getting in the current and staying in the current. That one thing will make the biggest difference after getting the early start, I would say. All right, and oh, that's my sweetie pushing through the pool. Yeah, isn't he good?
Yeah.
I like
He's
the
a
chair.
beast. Yeah.
I like
oh,
your,
thank
I like
you.
your parasol.
Thank you very much.
You know, one of the things that came up in an earlier slide that's really illustrated well here is it was about loose oars
Yeah,
and not having them too tight or too loose.
those are a
Because I
little tight.
have heard of an incident in which the boatman was tossed around in the raft in a particularly maybe not under control run, and her leg actually went between the oar and the
Oh,
boat, and she
bad.
fell out of the boat.
Oh,
Yeah, oh is right.
broke
It
it,
wasn't a good ending.
broke the leg, not the oar.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so having those oars so that they're up there snug and not flopping around is actually a good thing. And
Mhm.
this oar here is a picture of that good thing.
About where you would put it.
Yeah, yep,
Mhm.
yeah,
Cool. Thank you for that.
yep.
And this is my idea of making time downriver and bringing less stuff. Don't bring any rafts. Who needs them anyway? You can fit it all in a little boat. But it's definitely a harder trip, you know, than a raft. You don't have cases of beer or umbrellas or any of that stuff.
Yeah, but there's other trips you can get beer from.
That is true, and ice and all kinds of luxuries. So let's get into the final section here, recovering. And really, this is Ken's to introduce. What do you want to tell us? Want me to dive right in?
Yeah, just jump to the first slide. And
Mistake number one. I'll
well,
be back
actually,
in a sec.
before we get to stuck on the beach, what
Yeah.
I would say is recovering is a lot of what running, rigging and running is about. I think that if you know, day one, you spend all this time rigging your boat. By day 7, you may be a little lackadaisical and you don't notice that you're not, you know, you haven't recovered from last night's party bash on the shore and you didn't rig everything. So recovering is redoing your rig or really, you know, waking yourself up. And once you're in the rapid, that shit happens. You know, you get hit by that wave and you lose your angle. Recovering is regaining your angle. And, you know, or in lieu of anything else, recovering is straightening up your boat. Because there are a few things in the Grand Canyon you can't run if you hit them straight. Yeah, I wouldn't want to run the trough in lava and I wouldn't want to run the hole in crystal, if, you know, in any angle. But anything you run down there, if you can hit it straight, you're way more likely to do okay. So recovering starts with, while you're in the rapid, is recover your angle, straighten your boat up, and push into stuff. Just know that you're going to be running bigger stuff than you might like, but it's okay. You know, straighten it up. Okay.
I like it. Go for the gut. No,
yep.
that's not what you said.
No. Stuck on the beach. In all likelihood, you'll have water fluctuations, and you can prevent it by picking a spot on the beach where, when the water drops, your boats will be okay. That may require some extra boat lining and preparation, right? But think about it. Think about where are we parked on this long flat section of eddy where, when the water drops, it's going to leave our boats 20 feet from the water. That's not good. Better to come up to the top of the eddy where it's deep and line your boats from the top and bottom end of them, lash them together, right? Okay, well, if you miss that and your boats are stuck on the beach, to recover, you have to get them unstuck. And there's a picture, right? They picked the wrong spot of the eddy to tie in, and now their boats are quite a ways from the water. Well, the boats suction onto the sand. So you have to unstick them. You all got to heave at one end and shove the end of it in an angle so that it breaks the seal. If you try to just push that boat straight back into the water, it's tough. So break the seal on the bottom of the boat. You may have to unrig some of the boat depending on how heavy it is and how far you are. But if you can unstick the seal, you may be able to shove the thing back into water.
Mhm. And we all
That's-
have made this mistake. Have you guys all made it? I certainly have.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Yeah,
ready
and
for
sometimes
number
you forget, was this a weekday or a weekend? Because the weekends drop out.
Right,
right?
yeah,
And
back
if
to the gauge, you can see the change there at the end of August to September too. I mean, there's the dam releases are adjusted seasonally and also weekly, and then on weekends, the releases are lower.
Much lower. And if you're 3 days after the weekend, you forget, well, wait, I'm getting the weekend's water when? Right? So you have to kind of figure out what day's water you're going to get and plan
Mhm.
accordingly.
Well, and look at this gauge on August 29th to 30th, they didn't release. The water stayed flat at 11,000. So the dam
Yeah.
management can change their plan too at any time.
That's right.
The other thing that might blow up is that you put your sand stake in and the water comes up much higher than you thought.
Yes.
And you're suddenly, your secure sand stake is being mooshed around in soft watery sand. So that's another factor of recovery.
Hey, Les, I got a story about that I didn't have personal experience, but at Stone Creek, the water comes up after lunch. And a real popular thing to do is to get to Stone Creek Beach for lunch, get it done, and then go on a hike up Stone Creek.
Mhm.
It just happened to be that at this particular trip, all of them were hooked to sand stakes that weren't high enough. And all of the boats were gone when the
Was this
trip
a
got back to
commercial
the
trip?
hike.
Not a commercial trip.
They actually finally got them, and with a lot of help from a lot of other companies as well as private trips, the group was kind of rescued through the night and got down to their boats that eddied out, actually caught on the sand stake caught on a rock just below Deer Creek Falls.
Wow.
So the trip actually got put back together with a lot of help from a lot of different people.
Before
But it
dark.
was a bit of a deal to see your boats gone.
Mike, were the rafts connected to one another?
Yeah, they were all tied together. The boats were strapped together kind of from the middle of the boats, and then they were tied together in the back as well.
All
With
counting
one of the
on that
stern
one
ones.
sand stake.
No, they were all on six sand stakes.
Wow.
They were all on their own sand stake, but all of the sand stakes were put in just below the high water mark. So the rule of thumb has become tie it to something firm on shore. And if that takes undoing a throw bag to go all the way to shore in a tree, at least one boat is tied to that. And the current isn't all that fast. It just came up and the water saturated the sands and the
Yeah.
But
What a
took a ride.
story.
I think it's always a good idea to raft up side by side all the boats and then have a cam strap connecting the frames. So if one point of attachment fails, the other boats will hold that boat in place. Plus, if you're
Yep.
shopping for dinner, it's easier
Yep.
to walk around all these rafts rather than have one raft 100 yards away or being loose. So that's just another aspect.
Yeah, totally agree. Strap them together side by side, frame to frame.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow, a whole trip of lost rafts.
It was disappointing for the guides on that trip.
I bet. So, mistake number 2, stuck in an eddy. We did talk about this. Any more to say?
Recovering from big eddies is challenging, and just assume you can't outrow the river. Think if you're not a kayaker, you don't think about peeling out, but in a raft, if you get caught in the eddy, don't try to pull straight to the river. Row with the current up the eddy to the top of the eddy, get your momentum going, and pull on that downstream oar so you bust through the eddy line and get yourself out of the eddy, because you can spend a lot of energy rowing against the current. Current's very strong, eddies are big. And so the recovery is get out by riding the eddy up to the top and powering through that eddy line.
Eddy fence, eddy
Eddy
wall.
fence. eddy
Yeah.
wall, right? Some of them are a wall.
Some
Don't get
of
in the eddy below granite or helicopter eddy. You don't want that.
Right?
Yeah.
I want to know if you guys can put to words how it is that you row down an eddy line when there's like a band of fast current and there's an eddy right next to it, and you need to stay in that band of fast current. How do you keep your momentum going downstream without getting spun into the eddy?
I think the first thing I'd say is your angle is the most important thing. Is your boat lined up with the current you want to be in? Because if you're sideways to it, it's no good. You've lost your angle. Your bow or your stern will get caught by that eddy. And that means, it might mean 5 strokes on the same side to keep your boat running along the current that you want and not into the eddy that's right next to you. Right? You may have to push 5 times quickly on that one oar to keep your angle.
Yeah, that's what I end up doing. I was just wondering if maybe Mike has a magic trick for us.
You know, I believe that the anticipation is the key as well, is seeing where that stuff is and setting the momentum up to go towards the middle of the river. Even setting the angle of it to bounce off that eddy line.
So hit it broadside instead of puncturing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Instead of piercing, bounce off of it. And boy, it's kind of like, I don't know. I liken it to moving fast, doing anything, whether it's driving a car, skiing, or anything. Having your vision to be able to look as to what's right in front of you, and switching it to see what's a ways out there, and then come back. Then switching between those two perspectives helps quite a bit, that you can keep track of where you are, but you can see where you're going as well.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, you make the big moves, you row through the rapid, you go, oh boy, you pat yourself on the back, and all of a sudden you're in the swirlies below that big rapid, and you start to lose control, and all of a sudden you're being sucked into an eddy. So I've always gotten in the habit of trying to keep my oars moving below the main drop to keep that mow going downstream until I'm out of that swirly eddy water left and right and back into a current flow down river.
Yeah, great
Yep,
point.
I agree.
Thank you, Les.
Yep.
Yeah, momentum management in the swirlies is super important. Yeah,
I was thinking about that changing water level thing as well. And though it won't come up as much on the river, when you're pulling into a side creek, think about, what if that side creek's water level changes? If you kind of park yourself in the side creek and go for a hike and there's a flash flood, you can lose your boats. If you happen to have parked just upstream of it, you're totally fine. If you're enough downstream, you're probably okay. But I have encountered flash floods. It's more of a hiking safety issue. If you're ever hiking and you hear a loud rumbling noise, don't ponder too long where that jet is. Just start running uphill, because flash floods come quick and they're dangerous. But if we're thinking about the rafts, if you can avoid parking in the middle of the side creek, do it. And if you have to park there, make sure your boats are really tied well, just in case. You don't want to lose them.
Yeah, good point. All right, a few pictures of eddies. That's helicopter eddy on river left up above the Deer Creek. And then the top right photo, I don't know if you guys have ever had anything get stuck in that left wall eddy at Bedrock, but I have. We had a kayaker and a kayak, both of them in that eddy for at least 10 minutes, if not 15, before we were able to get them out. So yeah, they're scary. These keeper eddies are very scary, and the best thing to do, they're much easier to avoid than they are to escape. Mistake number 3.
So recovery with swimmers happen. And recovery obviously means get them out of the water as quick as possible, right? Means partly training your swimmers to not be passive swimmers, to help them think about, as soon as they can get their feet downstream and look around and figure out where the best safety is. What raft can they swim to? Or are they close to shore and they should get out, right? If they're not so close to shore and there's a raft close by, way better to get to the raft than to try to go to shore. Because who knows what's between you and shore, or stopping on shore. It can sharp rocks. There's all sorts of problems. Get back in the raft if you can, obviously. And are they keeping their head about them, right? Some people just lose their cool. They get thrown into the water and they can't think straight anymore. So recovery also means yelling at them and getting their attention and trying to get them to start being an active swimmer. If you can. Some people are the deer in the headlights and they're just thorned and they're not going to be much help. But if you can yell, hey, swim to us, or whatever, to engage them as an active participant so they can help recover. And hard shells are helpful in recovery situations with a swimmer, mostly for keeping the swimmer calm and they have something to hold on to. Trying to paddle a swimmer to shore is really hard. I mean, they're like an anchor and the river's huge, and much better to just kind of paddle them to a raft. That's been my experience, trying to actually paddle somebody against the current through an eddy and then to shore where they're going to have to now be saved by whom. That's tough. So recovery often means getting them back in their raft. If there's another kayaker, then you're going to have to get to shore with their boat. But you kayakers are more experienced with that. They tend to know what's swimming, and you work as teams to get the gear ashore and so on.
Yeah. It can feel pretty chaotic though.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Here's the list of things to do if you're the one swimming.
Right. Yeah. Again, recovery from, flips happen. And if you find yourself under the raft, don't wait around. Actively figure out which way you should go and try to get out from under that raft, right? Push yourself away from it, crawl along it, whatever you need to do to get away from it. Because being underneath the raft is obviously a bad place to be. And then once you're out from under it, if you can assess the situation, you're really through the rapid, climb back on top of it. That's the important thing in recovery, is to get somebody back up on that raft and maybe even steering it somewhere, but at least being able to grab the rope, throw it to somebody, get a rope thrown to them. It gives you some way to help recover and save that raft. If you can't get back on the raft, don't swim along next to it. It's generally not good to be right next to a raft that you can't get back on top of. It's going to push up against something, a rock, or drop in another hole and bash you or something. If you can't get on top of that raft, move a little away from it. That's a better recovery strategy. And then, and then figure out how you're going to get out of the water. Is there another raft you can get to and go back to being a swimmer if you can't get on top of it?
I have a little anecdote I want to share. On Pistol Creek Rapid, one of my river trips, we had a raft flip there, and below Pistol Creek, it's class 2 plus maybe a little bit of 3 for several hundred yards. And I had eddied out. I knew, okay, here comes the raft. They got one guy and two guests in it. Raft comes out. I can count 2 heads, but not the third. And I go, oh shucks, where is this other person? And I had a pretty clear view. That person had to eddy out. Turns out they'd gotten under the overturned oar rig, and they were in an air pocket up in the front of the boat. And they panicked, and most people panic, just grab hold of something and won't let go. So they were breathing, they had plenty of air, but they're going down the river. And so we peeled out after that raft, and I was freaking out, worried that the person might have been tied, gotten wrapped up in a rope or something, got injured or whatever. So I had to dive off my raft under the water, which is hard to do with a life jacket on. Found that person, and this little 13-year-old girl was just scared to death. Like, oh, I'm gonna die. No, you're all right. Come out with me. And so we had to kind of work our way under the raft, come back up. And anyways, it worked out okay. But counting the noses, of every raft, and then where are those people after they come out, it can be problematic.
Yeah.
One thing to add about getting out from underneath the boat is oftentimes it's dark underneath there. That little girl was probably in the dark and didn't know where she was going. She didn't know which direction to go. So the thing to do is just choose a direction and keep going that way, hand over hand. And ultimately, 4 or 5, 6 hands, you'll come out to one end of the raft. Just don't change direction. Just keep going the same direction.
Yep.
And then you don't have to make any decisions.
Good
One of the
call.
things I-
That's right. It's hard to know where you are, and you might go
Yeah.
the length of the boat, but at least you're moving. At least you're
Yeah,
going to get out
exactly.
eventually.
Yep.
I think the other key is that as the raft's flipping, I always think about the missile that's launching out of the submarine, that as the boat's going over, try to throw yourself away from that overturning boat. And that's hard because when people panic, they hold on tighter, whether it's the straps by their box where they're sitting on, or a hand line or whatever. But if the raft's starting to flip, project yourself away from that overturning boat.
Well, it's easier if you're running to the high side. As you launch from the high side, when it's flipping, you can shove off and use it like a
That's
diving
true.
board.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, the last point on that last slide
Oh,
was about what is one of the biggest recovery issues.
what?
Next one, there it is.
Oh,
Hypothermia, right? Is that even on a hot summer day, if somebody's been in that river for more than a few minutes, they can have hypothermia. And the signs would generally be they're not thinking so clearly, they're wandering around on shore, they look a little shocky, they're, they're kind of dumbing down. That's like one of the first signs. And it's best to deal with it right away. A hot day won't necessarily warm them up, right? If somebody is showing any signs of hypothermia, better to break out a sleeping bag and get in it with them. Skin to skin, one layer of
If they're
dry
really
clothes.
badly hypothermic, yeah.
If they're really, but if you've been in that water for very long, it's, that's a real actual emergency. It's not great to just say, we got through the rapid, let's get back in the boat. If they're acting loopy and, part of the recovery is dealing with hypothermia. So that water's, what is it, 45 degrees?
Sure.
I mean,
And,
it's like
and
the
there's
ocean.
the added complication that people sometimes will go for a lengthy swim and think that they're okay. And then a half an hour later, they'll be hypothermic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because it's hot outside and you feel okay. And it's like everyone else is fine. And no.
Yeah. At the very least, make sure they have warm, dry, clothes, and that they're fed immediately as soon as they can tolerate food. Give them quick energy food and do
They're
all the things
talking
you do.
coherently, their
Right.
muscles are coordinated, they're not kind of ambling,
Right.
listing on the boat. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is kind of a gimme because it's all the mistakes. Right?
Yep.
Didn't rig, didn't put your life jacket back on, opened up your day bag to get a treat and didn't close it, had a couple of extra beers, and then you messed up on the river. Number 5, stuck on a rock. This is Jugbuster, you guys. We were trying to line our rafts down the sneak at Jugbuster because they had blasted some sharp rocks into the line, and we ended up pinning our raft for 24 hours in a toaster slot.
Jugbuster, Bio?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wow.
that's Taz. Yeah. Yeah, that was an epic. We created our own epic by getting our raft stuck on a rock.
And this is one of those challenging recovery things. It's, we could obviously spend a whole seminar on how to unstick a stuck raft. It is a skill. There's lots of mechanical advantage things to know about. And, obviously prevention is way better than fixing it. But if you're going down there and no one on your trip has rescue experience or knows how to get a raft unstuck, somebody needs to learn how to do that. Take a course, go out and actually practice it once. Because there are some places in the Grand Canyon where if you get your raft stuck, if you get wrapped on in the middle of the island in Crystal, that's really bad. You're gonna need a helicopter rescue, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that, it doesn't happen that often, but it's just one of those it's one of those things that somebody on the trip needs to know how to do that.
On this trip, in the picture, there were 11 of us guides on there, and we tried all of our raft guide tricks. And this raft did not come out from where it was until it had been, we pulled on it like every direction quite forcefully. But it didn't come off until we had de-rigged it, taken all the bags, boxes, frame off, gotten all that to shore, and then started deflating it. And we got the air deflated out of the thwarts and still couldn't get it out. And then they started letting the air out of the main tubes, and finally we were able to pull it out. So it took us 24 hours for real.
Yeah.
We learned a lot.
Right. The only thing after the deflating the tubes in the old days was cutting the floor, because now it's
right. That's next. Is the knife.
Next. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I got to put a commercial plug in here for a book called River Rescue.
Yeah.
That a lot of people don't take courses, and they think this is esoteric, and a lot of the techniques in river rescue don't apply on the Grand Canyon because it's such a big river. But nevertheless, have it in your library, and you go, oh yeah, this boat is pinned. How do I rig a Z-drag? Do I have the right ropes, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing I think of the good library is a good medical book. And there's a book called Medicine for Mountaineering that is most excellent. That if somebody gets sick, orthopedic trauma is fairly obvious, but internal injuries, illnesses, they're more complicated. And if you can have a reference book like that, or like River Rescue, it might help you in the long run, even though you're ashore behind a bush, thumbing through the pages, trying to figure out what's ailing this patient, or which angle should I pull this boat off? But I just like to mention that.
Yeah, certainly an essential part of recovery, right? I mean, there's the obvious river parts, trying to get your raft off of bedrock, right? A story in bad use of momentum, and unfortunate outcome of not using angle and momentum, right? It's an easy rapid, but if you can blow it, right? It's easy if you know what to do. But I appreciate what you're saying about the medical, having a good medical book. And really, one of the things about Grand Canyon, which is a little different than lots of day runs, or even, the Middle Fork of the Salmon, there's always 9 other trips around you. In Grand Canyon, that's not the case. You can go days without seeing people. And having somebody on the trip who has some medical experience and or the book, right, can be just a big part of recovery. Because if somebody starts getting sick, ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. The sooner you can figure out what's going on, you might prevent it getting worse, or decide, hey, you got to get them out of there, if that's possible from where you are. But like learning to unpin a raft, some basic emergency medical training is really worthwhile. If you're going out into the big wilderness, this is not a day trip. This isn't a place where you can count on other people to come by and bail you out. This is the real, this is an expedition. And it doesn't always seem like that, because, there's rental stuff and you show up to put in and it's all packed for you and everyone does this. Well, 200 plus miles of wilderness, and every plant there wants a piece of you, and the heat and the sun, and it's a harsh environment.
Yeah,
water's icy cold and blah blah blah. Yeah.
Ken, those are all good things. This I sent this video. It's from YouTube that I found to Teresa, and what it doesn't show is this is at bedrock, and the rescuers are trying to get the raft off, which wasn't badly pinned. It was kind of parked, and they were putting their legs against the raft and push it away. And the raft would bobble upstream, and there's a huge danger of the 2 or 3 rescuers that are doing that of falling between that raft and bedrock itself. Right. And they kept doing that, and I go, oh God, there's no belay on those people. There's, the rock's slippery, it's smooth. And when they finally got the raft off, they put an oar, which increased the leverage factor to push it away from the raft. But anytime you have a boat, don't ever, risk somebody getting hurt or drowning trying to rescue a piece of equipment that you can buy or figure out how to survive without. The priority in any boat unpinning is the safety of the rescuers at hand.
Yep.
Very much so.
Safety first.
Yep. Uh-oh. Oh, ready for the next one? Stuck in a hole.
Those holes are bigger than you think. And some of them don't look that retentive, but there's a few that are in relatively insignificant rapids. 212 is the classic one that it's kind of class 2. There's plenty of room to miss that hole, but if you're not paying attention, right, you can get stuck in the thing. And then flipping is sometimes the way out. Or if you've high-sided until you're exhausted and there's a raft nearby, you can swim to that other raft. Don't stay. Your safety is more important. Get out if you need to. And but I've also watched people kind of run around like a chicken with their head cut off, stuck in a hole, and not actively doing much, right? If your boat is upright, get on the oars, pull to the side of the hole. Try to, you may have to be on the high side or get your crew on the high side so the boat's not in danger of flipping. But see if you can work your way around in the hole. Don't assume that it's just going to have its way with you. This kayakers are more used to this, but rafts have to be engaged and recover actively. Get on the downstream oar, pull like your life depends on it. You may be able to pull yourself out to the side, right? Figure out which side you should go to. Which side is the lower one? There is recovery, right? And if you get too tired, you jump.
Then dive for the downstream water. Yeah, I saw a video of an 18-footer stuck in this hole that I have in the picture, and they spent minutes in there. Minutes. And I don't think that they had the option to get on the oars. They were getting thrashed around too hard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think they were just barely surviving. And they did finally flip and come out. But yeah, it's one of those mistakes that it's just far preferable to avoid. Oh, here's the classic photograph of how a hole works, which I don't think we really need to explain to everybody, but you can see it in the photograph. The water goes down over something and then it recirculates back upstream on the surface, and anything that floats is in the water that's going back upstream in the entrapment zone. The one everyone's been waiting for. And we've talked a fair amount about flipping it already, about how to get out from under the boat and how people can freak out and hang out in air pockets under there.
Yeah. The one thing we didn't really talk about yet is how to flip the boat back over, right? We talked about get out from under it, don't be downstream of it. If you're near it, get away from that, and climb up on top if it's flipped. Once you get the boat to shore, which if you can get a paddle or get an oar, you can steer. You can do a lot on an upturned boat, more than you'd think. Or you can get to the bow line, and when you're close to shore, you can uncoil the bow line and you can jump into the eddy, and you can pull the boat to shore. It's kind of risky and you kind of have to, but you can do that. It works. Once you have the boat to shore, here's the photo. You have to line up the boat and get a bunch of people with ropes on one side and get your leverage. So you're pushing there. There was the picture of somebody paddling the raft to shore,
That
right?
one.
He, with his oar, he steered it into the eddy, right? That is a doable thing, standing on the bottom.
Unbelievable. But he did it.
Yep.
Here's the
Now,
one you're thinking of, though.
There we go. Okay, so once you're on shore, you have ropes tied to the frame and at least 3 people. Now, what I would add to this photo is 4 or 5 people on the shore side where the one person is standing, so that as the people are leaning back with the ropes, other people can be underneath lifting and pushing the boat up, because these things are heavy, right? If all the gear is still in it, which you hope, even 3 people leaning back like that might not be enough. So you may need 3 on each side to turn this thing back over. And one mistake that happens is the boat is nearly vertical and you think it's turned over and the people pulling the ropes let go and jump in the water, or the people pushing from underneath stop and the boat falls back down.
Happens a lot.
That can happen. You have to go past the vertical, get some momentum and shove it over, and then you've righted your raft. And make sure somebody has the bow line, because if you flip it back over and nobody's holding the bow line, it'll just drift away.
Yeah, I want to actually pull up a video. Let's make this big. Can you guys see the video? So this is more typical. Is like the whole crew is hauling on the ropes trying to pull it over from the shore.
We can't see it, Teresa. You have to
You
go
can't
back to
see it?
screen sharing.
Oh, let me see if I can. Sorry,
It's the end of the
I got it. Screen share.
safety.
Okay, now can you see it?
I am one of the moderators, so people will be.
Yep.
Just know that.
All right. Basically, they flipped one and upset, and they're showing them pulling it over. Let's see if I can turn this sound down. There.
Oh,
That's
big
what I'm
long
talking
lines
about.
way
One
up
way to
on
pull it
shore.
right side up would be to pull from
What's
shore.
that hotel?
yeah, they got 2, 4, 6 people pulling, but nobody interesting. So they were going toward the shore, which gives you more leverage for pulling, but then you're going to flip the boat up onto shore, which might not be ideal.
I would suggest though, that if they have actually people down at the water level,
They could get smashed.
they can manage that side of the raft and make sure that it does
That's
kind
true.
of flip onto the water.
That's true.
And
They
you
could
can
push
actually
the boat
engage
out a
more
bit.
people by having those long ropes.
Okay, so I have another little war story. I was running the Salt River, and right below Quartzsite Falls, a 14-foot heavily loaded raft flipped, and there were three of us, yeah. 3 of us and a dog trying to get this boat back up, and we couldn't do it. We didn't have the horsepower. So what we did was we de-rigged. We reached down and removed all the straps holding the frame and the cargo load, flipped the raft over empty at this point, and then disassembled the whole war rig and all the dry bags and boxes separately and re-rigged the raft. So that's a little trick to pull out if you ever get shorthanded for doing this kind of recovery.
Just pull it and then they come.
Mike, what do you think? How would you do it?
I'm a kind of believer of that long line idea.
Long line onto shore and pulling towards shore?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it does take a bit of management with maybe 2 people, one on either end of the boat, to keep the boat out into the water. So
Mhm.
it flips and lands on water. But it seems like it's a little bit more manageable. You can actually teeter it at 90 degrees and
Yeah, you have more
have it
control over it.
come down fairly under control. So doing it the way that it is in the picture really
Yeah.
does rely. 3 people weren't flipping this boat over if it was a 18-day.
No, this was lightly loaded and it took 4 of them.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. A fully loaded one doesn't come over quite that easily.
No, you need like 8 or 10 people.
Yeah. Yep.
4 on each side. That would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah,
my
or a
sense
motor
of
rig
management.
full of people is great. I've been saved by motor rigs before.
This technique, if it's a empty paddle raft, can actually happen out in the middle of the river with that flip line that Les is talking about.
Yeah,
It's a strap that wraps around your waist maybe twice and hooked on with a carabiner, and you hook it on to the middle D-ring in the boat. And with 2 or 3 people, you can actually flip the boat while it's still out in the water, not even having to come to shore.
and pull everybody in and you're good to go.
And you're good to go. And in fact, that's kind of the way many people in wooden dories recover their boats too, is running a wooden dory upside down into shore. A lot of times is more damaging than the flip itself. Wooden dories
Oh.
don't like the rocks and the momentum that happens.
Yeah.
So oftentimes dory boaters will flip their boat, make a point of reflipping their boat while it's still out in the current.
Yeah. I would if I had one of those nice boats.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And we had to flip a crystal on my trip in 2016, and that picture that you have depicted there, we had a couple more guys. They're all big, and I'm telling you, I had a lot of fun being one of those guys. I was getting some street cred and some real laughter out of it. You know,
Excellent.
I paid my dues. I said, bring it on. I'm good. I had a blast.
Yeah. I mean, what I notice, you know, most of the time on the trips I've been on that had flips is that people don't really want to go out there and get on that raft and pull it over because they don't want to go in the water again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But can we go on, or is there
Yep.
more about flips? I mean,
No,
there's always more,
That's
but
good. Yeah.
yeah, okay. Ripped raft? Have you guys
Right.
repaired some ripped rafts
Sure.
in the Grand Canyon?
Not modern ones, not since
No?
Green River boats, which constantly tore and leaked, and you know, but yeah, it obviously can happen. So
Yeah.
the key thing about recovering from, you know, a damage to any equipment is that you have the proper gear to repair it and know how to use it. So if you're renting a rig, make sure they go over with you how the repair kit works, where it is, what are the parts, right? Because you can have one, and if you don't know what to do with it, right? And if it's a good company, they have a description in there, but you know how manuals are. Maybe you can read the thing and figure out what to do, but somebody should have figured out where's the pump, where's the patch kit, how do you use it, and so on. Because if you haven't planned that well, then recovery will be really tough. You'll have a hard time recovering.
Yeah.
Yep. And kayaks often don't think about and bring repair kits, right? This is one place where having some kind of adhesive to fix a cracked kayak. Duct tape works, sure, but yeah, it's a 3-week trip. If you're 4 days in and you crack your kayak, you don't want to duct tape the thing. Bring some putty that you can seal it. Sure, it's not the most aesthetic thing, and your boat won't surf as well, but it'll keep the water out, and that's kind of key. And bring some aqua seal, because you know your spray skirt tears, you're hosed, right? If you don't have repair kit for your multi-day kayaking venture, and keep it in your kayak, because you may not be with the rafts. Somebody in the kayak crew has to have a spare paddle and the kayak repair stuff with them, because the rafts
Good
might
point.
be down around the corner,
Yeah.
right? And you know, this is part of both preparation and the recovery is, oh, we can repair, yeah, a spray skirt, your aqua seal isn't going to work in an hour, but okay, if you have to wait there because you have no other way to get downriver, at least you have a way to get downriver. You can repair your gear, right? Yep.
I'm a big fan of YouTube, and I guarantee you can find a video on how to do this on YouTube as well, in addition to doing it yourself. But let's not use technology before you go, of course, because you ain't getting no signal in the ditch.
That's right.
Yeah, and there's no YouTube in the bottom of the big ditch.
Yep. That's right. Yeah, and same thing with medical history and evacuation stuff. It's a lot of preparation, right? Did everyone report on, are they a diabetic, right? Or do they have a cardiac condition? Because when it comes down to it, if you knew that, you're much more likely to help them recover quickly and figure out if they need an evacuation or they just need some sugar, right? Or they just need their insulin. But if you didn't know any of that stuff, recovery may seem scary. The person's acting all loopy and you think they just drank too much or they're dehydrated, and giving a person, you know, who needs insulin more water to drink is not a good plan, right? That's not going to help them. So it's really, this is part of recovery, is the gathering your information, seeing your YouTube videos, having your medical kit together, and figuring out, wow, what are we going to do if things go bad? Do we have a sat phone? Okay, if we do, then we can work together. If we need to hike out, does anyone know where hikes out can happen, or what, right? How to hike out from, not just from the canyon, but out from this rapid where you're now stuck on the wall. Do you have to swim? Can you climb over that thing? What are your skills? And knowing those things is part of recovery. I can climb up and over that because I'm a climber. No, I can't climb over that. I'll fall and get hurt. Okay, I better swim.
Mhm. And I don't know that we have time for communications, as we're now like a whole hour over, but let's go on. Let's just finish. This is the last mistake in my list of mistakes, and that is that a person gets so inebriated that they can't functionally run the river, right? And in my view, the best way to manage this risk is to prevent it.
Of course. And recovery often means the group telling the person, yeah, you're endangering not only yourself, but us. If you keep doing this, we'll mutiny on you. We won't let you row your raft, or we'll kind of, limit your alcohol consumption because it's kind of dangerous.
I know some crews, local people, who, when someone gets to a certain level of drunk in camp, they put a life jacket on them in camp. And then when they get to the next level of drunk, they have to wear 2 life jackets.
And then a straight jacket.
I want to see the cone of shame.
But I have to say, like, this looks delightful to me. I would love to be on that boat and have a beer with him. I'm not a teetotaler, but I do think that a certain amount of moderation is essential for river safety. And the other beer blunders, we did talk about the sea anchor under the boat. And I have noticed that drunks tend to not be very good at clipping in their drag bags. And so they lose them all the time, which is fairly amusing. And that's it, gang. So if you are not a seasoned canyon river runner, there are a bunch of outfitters that can help you get started. They won't row your boat down the river, and they won't teach you how to row, but they will at least put you in the river with a really nice set of equipment. And here are those outfitters that I know about. There may be some new ones now, but I know about these 4. I used to work for Pro, and they're all good. All 3 of them are good. Moenkopi River Works is a friend of mine. That's Brady Black. Seba is putting on like some excellent food packs. I mean, they all do good work. If you are not a river runner and you're actually made it this far into this talk, but you don't know how to run rivers, you should not do your own river trip. You should hire some professional river guides with a commercial company and get real help. There's no way that a person with no experience in Grand Canyon is going to have a good time unless they're with people that know what they're doing. And I have a couple of links here. This one for Mark's rowing video is the one that Les was talking about. And I've written 2 articles about rowing that are out there on the web. And here's a link to Amazon to get Les's book, which I cut my teeth on that book. I've read it like 10 times and studied it. Some wonderful stuff. And from the Lower Columbia Canoe Club, I thank you very much for taking the time to explore this subject with us. And I thank you, Mike Hipsher and Ken, whose last name I know very well but forgot, Goldberg, and Les Bechdel. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. It's been a wonderful evening.
Glad to support river safety.
Yep.
Thanks, Teresa.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
See you all on the river.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
we
putting this
will.
together.
I just want to say, as a rower
Yeah.
as a rower for almost 40 years, competitive rower, like, as in crew teams, I went on my first paddling trip at the Grand Canyon in 2016. And it's fun to see the passion that you guys have and can talk forever and ever and ever about paddling the way rowers can just talk forever about rowing. So it's nice to know there's another group of people similarly predisposed to their passion. So thank you.
Oh, you bet.
Yep.
And rowing is wonderful because it gets you in great shape too. It's good for your health.
Well, Teresa, I just want to say thank you for putting this together, and I hope the Lower Columbia Canoe Club is paying you lots of money to do this.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
That's right. You can buy the beer on our next trip.
Yeah, you guys can all buy me a beer, but not all on the same day. Have a
Right.
good night.
Thanks, Teresa.
Good night.
Oh, look
Night.
at, there's 90 things in the chat.
Wow.
Yes, the recording will be available. You're very welcome, all of you who are saying thank you.
I'll be ready.
Yeah.
Cool.
All
Do we
right.
find, is the recording on the site, on the LCCC site?
It'll be on the same page where the link was to register for this talk.
Okay,
And
cool.
it's not obviously not up yet because we haven't even called a quits to it, but it'll be
Right.
up in a couple days.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm reading through the chat now because I haven't gotten to read it up to now. Oh, these
Yeah.
people say hi.
Yeah, you read through. I was sort of just tracking it. I answered a few questions on there, but
Thank you
I'm
for
hungry.
answering
I'm gonna
questions.
go eat dinner now.
All right. Yeah.